My entitled daughter ruined everything when she invited her grandparents to the party, but she didn't know the reason they were banned. I, 40 meters, met my wife, 38 feet, in high school. Her parents were and still are terrible. They completely mistreated her until she moved out at 18. My wife has always tried to be a good mother, to break the abusive cycle. We both have good jobs, but we still try not to spoil. They have chores, know their manners, are good kids in school. So my daughter came home one day and asked us to go visit her grandparents' house. We said yeah because we thought she meant my parents. But no, she meant my wife's. My wife immediately said no. Then I backed her, and said they will have no part in their lives. She said I was overreacting and that she deserves to meet all her grandparents, and we were being selfish. My wife was diagnosed with PTSD, and still sees a therapist due to all the bullcrap that she went through. It really annoyed me and I sent her to her room. I talked to my wife and said that I should tell her what happened, that her parents are not good people, so she understands why we are saying no. My wife was reluctant but agreed as long as she didn't have to be there so she wasn't triggered. I went to my daughter's room the next day and I talked to her. I said, look, I understand you are upset, but we are not saying no just to say no. There is a lot you do not understand, but I'm going to explain it, so that maybe you understand more. Your mom's parents mistreated her, she was humiliated daily, screamed and terrorized since she was 6 years old. Every moment and holiday was ruined by fear, and she almost stopped breathing on Thanksgiving due to her stepfather. Your mom and her sister still suffer from the trauma, and we will never have a relationship with them. I hope that you understand now. Once I told her, I thought she understood. Anyway, it was my wife's birthday a week ago and it was a really great day. My wife's sister, our 2 other children, and my whole family were there celebrating at our house. Until around 7 at night a knock at my door and my daughter went to answer the door. We figured it was a friend of hers. But when she came right back in the living room it was my crap mother-in-law and father-in-law. My wife and her sister both froze, and they came in like they freaking owned the place. Trying to be buddy-buddy. My wife asked them in a timid voice and said, "What are you doing here?" They said our granddaughter invited us. She then tried to speak up more and tell them they needed to go. But they wouldn't, so I got up and went between my wife and them and said, "Leave, you are unwanted here." My daughter really stood up for them and said that she talked to them, and that mom just exaggerated what happened. She thinks that they were good parents. That's when my father-in-law said, "That's right, whatever we did to you ungrateful kids you deserved." That pissed my wife off and she shouted to leave. I went up with my dad and we were going to push him out. But he is a 6 feet 4 inches 250 pounds bear, so brushed us off him and pushed my wife into the wall. Her head slammed into the wall. She had to get stitches. As soon as that happened, me, my dad, and brother forced him outside. Her mom kept saying that she was a good mom and my wife was dramatic, and she just had bad children. Anyway, my mother took my wife to the hospital because we were still trying to get them to leave the driveway. She brought her back once they had finally left. My wife didn't say anything the rest of the night, besides thanking my mother for the ride then going to our room. Her sister was really freaked out too and left, right after hugging my wife. My children were in the living room, and I told my son and my younger daughter to go into their rooms. I needed to speak to their sister. I admit I lost it. I screamed. I told her she was so selfish, and I couldn't believe she did that. That she still got in contact with them after I explained what they did to her mom when she was younger. How I was disgusted with her. She started to cry and say that she genuinely thought I was exaggerating. It would be good for them to get together. She said she got in touch with them on social media, and they seemed great. How they made everything seem not as bad, and she said she didn't think they could be that evil and be related to us. I told her there are evil people everywhere, we have just tried to shield her away. Because parents are supposed to protect their kids. I was so upset, I genuinely wanted to call her an idiot but I didn't. But everything my wife did to move past her trauma was demolished by this idiotic decision. My daughter apologized and I said sorry doesn't cut it. Her actions risked her mother's health and everyone's safety. My wife talked to her and said that she no longer trusts her, and how these are the consequences of her actions. For meddling in something that was not her business to meddle with. She has no more phone and no more visiting friends until she earns that trust again. We may add a punishment we see fit. I've comforted my wife as much as I can but she's not great. While I think honestly I went too easy on my daughter, I figured I should have other opinions. What do I do? Update. We made a report, and are pressing charges. We will be doing everything we can to get a restraining order. We didn't call the police because we live in a secluded area and it would take too long for them to get there. We deleted all my daughter's social media, and I did look at her text between her and the in-laws. She reached out first, and kept pursuing them. There were 3 messages before that my in-laws ignored until they eventually responded. Also, that was not the first conversation we had with her about my wife's parents. It was just the first in detail conversation. I told her specific scenarios and events that happened without getting too graphic. But her and my other children always knew that their grandparents were bad. We had multiple talks growing up when we first started to explain why they only have one set of grandparents, unlike most of their friends. But we never said anything in specific details about the actual events. Only that their grandparents were bad people, who hurt their mother and aunt a lot. She told me she's doing her best and feels bad for distancing herself from her daughter, but she's just extremely hurt. My wife's going into more therapy sessions than she normally does, and we have set an appointment for my daughter to see one as well, and we will try family therapy to get back to normal.